right, guys, we're moving on. We've been talking offense for the last few episodes. We're going to keep going. We talked running backs last time. We're going to move on to wide receivers, tight ends, and eventually running backs at large. But mainly today we wanted to talk wide receivers and tight ends because we put out a poll question the other day that we thought was pretty interesting. Missed a few options, and that's on me. I'll bear that one. But surprising results, to say the least, and some of our opinions, and we'll hit on that. But to piggyback off last week's conversation, or actually that was Monday. My mind, man, it's quarantine. But we were talking running backs. And so you two have good NFL heads, Pookie and Drew. I'm going to ask you guys a question. Since the year 2000, there have been 4 running backs win the NFL MVP. Can you name them?
Sean Alexander.
Reese Holmes. No. Adrian Peterson
was the one I didn't think you'd get. What'd you say, Poop?
Adrian Peterson.
It's 2.
LaDainian Tomlinson.
3. Think about this. I mentioned the year 2000 on purpose.
Oh, Jamal Williams.
No, that's a good guess. I think that was like 2002.
I was gonna say Ahmad Green, but I know that's. Yeah, I don't know why I wanted to say him.
NFL Hall of Famer. Played for one of y'all's teams at one point.
The Bus. Marshall Faulk.
Yes, Marshall Faulk. Greatest show on turf. I was like, dude, come on. We got
okay.
This, yeah. So there's your 4. Let's see, a little bonus question real quick. We'll keep going. You guys, I think you can get this. So 1990s to 2000, there were 4 others that won it. Can you think of 4 running backs that would have won the MVP between those years?
Terrell Davis.
Yes, Drew. What'd you say, Poop?
Terrell Davis.
Smith.
Dallas, Emmitt Smith.
Yes, yeah. He cut out for some reason. I couldn't hear. But yes, Emmitt Smith. You got 2. One is considered one of the greatest. I mean, if someone said this is the best running back of all time, you'd be like, well, I feel like Jim Brown's in there, but you couldn't necessarily. This would be a decent argument.
Walter Payton?
Are you kidding me? It's the 1990s.
I thought he was in the 90s.
In the 90s?
Yeah.
Pookie?
Barry Sanders?
Yes, Barry Sanders.
Oh.
And the last one played for a very good team, early 90s. Had a great run, couldn't capitalize.
Yeah. What's his name? For the Bills, it was
they were college
Thurman.
Teammates. You're on it, Pookie. You're on it.
Thurman Thomas?
Yes. He and Barry Sanders are actually teammates. There's a story I heard about Barry Switzer when Oklahoma was playing Oklahoma State. Thurman Thomas was racking up yards, but he said, guys, do not knock Thurman Thomas out of this game because their backup is actually a lot better than he is. That's when they have Barry Sanders. So Barry Switzer was already onto it. All right. There's a trivia question. Done with running backs for the moment. Drew, lead us off in this week's discussion. You got a question for us.
Yes, my question to you guys is, if you are the OC of your teams, the Pats and Steelers, do you value an undersized, like, slot guy who's more of a safety net, or a bigger outside receiver who's more of a, like, kind of deep threat guy, go get the ball in the air, kind of a red zone threat?
Help me out with – I need examples on this one.
Obviously, like a safety net, you think of like an Edelman or like a Wes Walker, even like an Amendola type guy. You can even throw Tyreek Hill in there, but when you think of Tyreek Hill, you think of big plays, big threat. So maybe not him. Big threat, you think of like Devontae Adams, Mike Evans. You can throw Julio in there, but again, Julio is a guy who does everything. So he's more of an all. But those are, I would say, like a Mike Evans to like maybe like a Julian Edelman comparison here.
You got a Pookie.
Okay, so for me personally, if like I was specifically like the Steelers, they're in a similar situation right now. They picked a guy named Chase Claypool, wide receiver out of Notre Dame, big guy, strong, and he's actually pretty fast.
Oh, now you like him.
Well, I'm giving him some compliments, because if you're valuing an offense that values the bigger outside receiver, that's the type of player you might want to draft. But for me, I was actually more in favor of them getting some sort of slot type receiver. Like maybe I wish they could have got Brandon Ayuk or a guy that you could put in the slot like J.K. Dobbins or Denzel Mims even. And those guys would have fit more for what they needed at the time. But as far as building for the future, you definitely want to have those big-time, big receivers that can make jump ball catches. They can work down the field and give you an offensive weapon. Now, if you look at a lot of the teams that have won the Super Bowl in the past few years, a lot of them have dominant slot receivers. And I'm speaking more specifically about the Patriots. You know, they have Julian Edelman, who working out of the slot, he can, you know, break a game for you, because whenever you're trying to cover your outside guys that are bigger, when you have a slot guy running crossing routes underneath, it becomes very difficult to stop. And that's why I think that you should, if I were the offensive coordinator, I would have to build like a complementary system where my big guys can get open because I'm so deep at wide receiver that my small inside receivers can make them be on it.
I mean, Drew, when you were mentioning examples, you mentioned 3 Pats. So I'm kind of biased on this question, so I'm going to let you go on this one.
I mean, I feel like when it comes to the NFL today, definitely I think values the slot guy more because the run game is not as heavy anymore. So that is an extension of the run game, is those little dink and dunk, drag routes underneath, or little slot routes, or even whatchamacallit, where you toss it and screens. Couldn't think of the word, screens. Those are kind of things that I think that like the Patriots do pretty well, and I think some teams, those are extensions of the run game to me. So I feel like having a big threat like a Julio Jones, like a Devontae Adams, someone who can go, even a Mike Evans, who can literally go get the ball anywhere you throw it to them. But then also when you get to the red zone where the points really matter, they can go up and get it. So if I was the OC, and for the Colts, they've always needed a big guy. We've never really had a big receiver, so having someone like Michael Pittman Jr., being like, I think he's 6'6" or something, like 6'4", 6'6", like someone who's big like that, I think is going to be a great extension of our offense. And just like Kuki said, having Ty, a smaller guy, it's going to open him up more. It's going to open Michael up more. But I definitely think having someone that attracts 2 guys, a safety and a cornerback, opens up everything. And if you have a big threat guy, then it solves a lot of problems.
I mean, the Patriots gave you all the blueprint of what it looks like when you have both. When you have Welker and Moss, I mean, that's just – and you saw what Brady did that year. So, I mean, it's a good question. It also has to do, though, with what you prefer on offense. I think you guys hit on that. And in today's NFL, I mean, with the Patriots, I think the thing that really killed them this year is we had Edelman, but you could key on Edelman because you had no one deep. And it's like if you have a guy who can go deep, but you don't have that slot guy. So like you guys were saying, there's a balance there, and it's hard to pick. But you're starting to see running backs who can move out into the slot now too, and create havoc there. But I mean, it's a good question. But in today's NFL, I think it's starting to favor the bigger guys. Starting to see more run on them. But okay, so obviously we were talking wide receivers and tight ends this week, and for the first time that we've done this for an episode, and we want to keep doing this in the future, we wanted to get the thoughts of the viewers and our followers beforehand. So we put out a poll question on Twitter yesterday talking about if you could have one group, like one team's group of wide receivers and tight ends, who would you rather have? And we put 3 teams on there with the option for others, so like versus the field. And the 3 options were the Buccaneers, the Cowboys, and the Saints. And we're a podcast that's based out of Texas and Arkansas. There's a lot of Cowboy bias going around these parts. Cowboys won the poll. Nah, Pookie, your reactions to how the poll went.
Well, I think that the Cowboys have an extremely talented receiving core. They have, Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Blake Jarwin. But I think that, honestly, the Buccaneers probably should have won that contest just because, CeeDee Lamb, he's a rookie, unproven, still has a lot of talent. I think he'll be a stud in this league. But compared to the Buccaneers, they have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Cameron Brate, O.J. Howard, Rob Gronkowski. And there's just so much talent in that receiver group that it's just hard for me to put somebody like the Cowboys ahead with so many unprovens. And, we know what we're going to get with that receiving group out of Tampa. They're gonna get yards. They're gonna put up numbers, and I think that it's just criminally insane to put the Cowboys ahead for now. I think that over the next few years, the Cowboys will have a stronger receiving core because they're built with young guys that are here to develop. But for right now, I think the Buccaneers should be at the top of the list.
Drew?
Yeah, and I mean, I even think when it comes to the Saints as well, you have a receiver who just, shattered records this year with the receptions. And then you have someone like Emmanuel Sanders, who I think is better than Gallup and CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, he's been in the league for a while. And even when you talk about the Cowboys with Cooper and Gallup, they had very similar years statistically. So, what makes them better than everyone else just besides their name and draft value? So I think the Cowboys are a good receiving core, and they're going to grow and develop. But I think as of right now, I would take the Bucs and the Saints receiving core. And I also think that comes with, having quarterbacks like Drew Brees and Tom Brady over Dak. But I think just based on skill alone, they have more talent. And I would even take Jared Cook over Blake Jarwin. So the Saints, I think, have a better core than the Cowboys do.
Okay, so the other option on the poll was other, and other ended up getting second place, which should tell you that the Cowboys, obviously there's so much Cowboy bias there. And I made the poll. It was I didn't even think about these two teams, but I should have mentioned the Browns and the Chiefs. We were going to get on to groups that we like. So we were going to talk about the best in the NFL, and you almost have to start with, those teams. I mean, throw the Bucs in there, but in my opinion, you could almost say that the Chiefs and the Browns are better than the Saints and the Cowboys. And it really has to do with the tight end position too, because with the Chiefs, whether or not you think, you have Tyreek Hill, depending on how you see Sammy Watkins and, McCall Hardman, Pookie, Demarcus Robinson too, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Depending on how you see those guys, that may influence your decision. But I really think when you throw Kelsey on top of it, that just changes the whole game. And I think that's probably one reason why you weren't judging the Cowboys so highly, is because they like that tight end, whereas the Bucs have arguably the greatest tight end of all time. The Saints, we like Jared Cook, okay, and then so. And then the Browns, you have Njoku, but you also have Austin Hooper coming in now, the highest paid tight end in the league, if I remember correctly. So it definitely throws a wrench in there. So guys, am I missing a group, or are those the best wide receiver tight end groups that we're looking at?
I mean, I think if you talk about tight ends, you also have to talk about Kittle. I think the Niners, they have a very undervalued receiving core. Debo, they just drafted another receiver. They just drafted Ayuk. Yeah. So I mean, I think they're getting there. I just don't think they have as many weapons, and the loss of guys like Emmanuel Sanders and others the last couple of years has hurt them. I think the Eagles have a very undervalued. They're just very old with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. Tight end core is probably the best tight end core. There's an argument to be made there, but they have two of the better tight ends. And then even Alshon Jeffrey when he's healthy, he's a killer. And then you have Deshaun Jackson, who we saw what he did in week 1. Unfortunately he was hurt. And then they just drafted another receiver too. So I think they drafted Jalen Reagor out of TCU. So I think there's some other teams out there that are good that just, even the Vikings, you have Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson. There's a lot of teams with a lot of good core, I think. But I do think the Chiefs, the Bucs, and probably actually the Browns are probably the three best.
And if we're talking tight ends, you bring up a good point. If we're just talking tight ends, I would throw the Eagles in there, and I would almost say they're my favorite if we're talking tight ends. I would throw a wrench in there and maybe throw the Ravens in there. And as far as it's like the talent maybe – okay, with the Ravens, I think it's more or less the system they play in opens up so much. I think the tight ends have so much space because of Lamar Jackson. That running game helps.
Your linebackers got a spy on Lamar Jackson.
Space, but dude, the numbers they put up this year, dude. Mark Andrews freaking ascended into another realm with the way he played this year. And but if we're talking about two names, I like the Eagles. I like Goddard and Ertz. And OJ Howard has. I think when he was coming out of Alabama, I was very high on OJ Howard. He hasn't produced in the NFL like you would like to see him, do. But if the Bucs keep him around this year, I think the league is starting to move more and more. You know, we're talking about the move for faster wide receivers, but the Ravens have put the emphasis back on having these tight ends. How valuable it is to have two tight. Well, hell, the Patriots drafted 2 tight ends this year, given there were like if the top 8 tight ends were still on the board, and the Patriots took the 6th and 8th ranked tight ends when all of them were still available. So obviously, it's all about fit for them. Hopefully, we'll see. Maybe they didn't make any mistakes. Hopefully, but the 2 tight end set, it seems to be coming back. Maybe so.
Yeah, I mean, so like being an ex tight end, I personally
You're not an ex tight end, Drew. You're a tight end forever.
Okay, tight end forever, whatever. But
Keep doing
being a tight end, I think it's I think it's the second most valuable position on the field. When it comes to, besides the quarterback, when it becomes to like the whole offense, because you have to. The whole offense, because you have to know the whole run game. You have to know the run. You have to know what all the assignments are. When you think about it, a lot of the counter plays, outside zone plays, even like inside zone, usually goes at the tight end, or the tight end's the lead blocker. So if you have someone who's valuable in that aspect, but they can also catch the ball and can put their hand in the dirt and can line up in like a fullback, H-back, or line up as a receiver, it's invaluable. I think you have to know just as much as a quarterback. So I think having someone that can be able to do those things is great, and having someone who can outrun linebackers, but then are also bigger than safeties and corners, again, is what made Gronkowski so valuable for the Patriots and made him one of the best, is because he was able to do all those things I just described and be better than everyone else. So I think no one really thinks about the tight end position, but if you have a great tight end, it just pushes you up. I mean, think about the last who's won the Super Bowl the last couple of years. Zach Ertz. You had Gronkowski a couple of years. You had Kelsey. Kittle was in the Super Bowl. I mean, maybe the tight end is the way to go.
I think that it's a telltale sign of an elite team when you have an elite tight end, because a lot of the bottom feeder teams, they might have a good tight end, but when you have a game-breaking tight end in your offense, it completely shifts the way the defense has to play. They can't just expect him to be a 6 blocker and pass protection anymore. You have to give attention to some of these out-of-this-world tight ends that they have nowadays. That'll obviously, that started with like a guy like Kellen Winslow back in, the 80s and the late 70s, early 80s, and being able to spread the ball out wide to a tight end. And if you have one, your team will definitely be up there in the rankings of success.
Got to throw my guy Hunter Henry out there real quick. Pookie and I are both from Central Arkansas, and if it weren't for injuries, I think he'd be higher on that list of top tight ends. And hopefully he stays healthy this year. And if the Chargers get their stuff together on offense, he could put up big numbers. But so let's move on to skill position at large. I think there are so many places to hit. And I think I brought this up earlier in an earlier segment, but I want to introduce this team to you guys for all-around skill players. They're young, but they've got speed. The Denver Broncos. And I think the way that John Elway and company have drafted in the last 3 years, I think John Elway's been an easy punching bag. You remember a time like where we were singing Elway's praises for the way that they handled quarterbacking situations, and then all of a sudden it like went downhill with Paxton Lynch and Trevor Siemian and all that. But if you quietly over these last few years, the talent they've accumulated, it's not quiet this year when you get Judy and KJ Hamler, but if you look at the weapons he's got around him now, you're talking Cortland Sutton, Jerry Judy, KJ Hamler, Noah Fant, and then the 2 running backs. You got Lindsey, and you add Melvin Gordon to that list. I mean, they're not the best position yet, but, I mean, that's serious talent, potentially.
And, I mean, another team that you got to look at is the Baltimore Ravens. We kind of touched on them with Mark Andrews, but their skill position group is just loaded. I mean, Mark Ingram, J.K. best backup tailback in the league, baby. Mark Brown, Willie Snead, Boykin, and then Thomas Andrews. I mean, there's just so much talent in that offense that no wonder Lamar Jackson is tearing up the league and shredding everybody's expectations for a mobile quarterback. He's got some of the best skill position players that you could have, and that shows that they're also very young, so they're going to be dangerous for the foreseeable future.
Here's one thing, Pookie, I heard, and this is probably something we may save for a later episode because you can get into a long argument, but Steve Smith came out this week and said the Ravens will struggle to attract free agency wide receivers and struggle to keep receivers that they currently have once they reach their second contract, because when it comes time for contracts, bonuses factor so much into how much you're paid. And if you're a receiver, you get paid for receptions and yards, touchdowns. When you look at the numbers for Ravens receivers, the tight ends are the ones getting a lot of the carries. Jackson's picking up big yards on the ground. They like to run the ball. And he says that the receivers don't put up the kinds of numbers that get you big contract bonuses. So in the future, you may not see Hollywood Brown get re-signed because of you're not going to be able to achieve your bonus. And you can go somewhere like, how many teams would take a Hollywood Brown on their roster right now? He's the prototype for what teams are looking for nowadays. The guy who can kill you over the top, but also line up in the slot when he needs to. I do agree with you. I think he raises an interesting point, and it does make me question what the Ravens will be able to do in 3 to 4 years' time when these guys are up for contract, when these names are. But, I mean, certainly I think in terms of the best, do they have the best players in all these positions? No, but that collection of talent coming together with a guy like Hollywood Brown, who is one of the top receivers in his class, certainly makes them – well, what am I saying? I mean, they put up huge numbers last year. They are a formidable offense. So, but I do agree with you, Pookie. That was a long-winded confirmation to what you said. Yeah.
When I think of groups, unfortunately, I wish this group would have been added to. But when you think of the Packers, you think of Adams, obviously. You think of Aaron Jones, who just had a killer year, and then you think of Jamal Williams. I wish they obviously added some tight ends and receivers. Another group is the Cardinals with D-Hop, Christian Kirk. You've got Larry Fitz. Obviously, you want him to be older. Kenyon Drake. So, I think the reason why I say those teams is because they can kill you with their big threat guys, but then they also have a killer run game as well. I don't think they're the most dominant, but I definitely think those are skill position groups that we need to look at as being sneakily good, in my opinion, because I think, Aaron Jones, just like I said, he had 19 touchdowns last year by himself. Jamal Williams is a great number 2. And then Devontae Adams is killer with A-Rod. And then D-Hop is arguably the best receiver in the NFL right now. And then I think Kenyon Drake's, again, sneakily good. He killed it when he came to the Cardinals in that offense. So I think there's a lot of excitement when it comes to skill, and I think having an explosive group is better than having just a couple guys that are just like it used to be, where just the workhorse backs or the workhorse receivers.
I do like the Cardinals. They're very interesting to me. Fitzgerald, probably on his last year, if not 2 years. So, but Kenyon Drake had an amazing year. And a quick stat. So the last 2 MVPs have been second-year quarterbacks. Kyler Murray, man, you never know. Just watch out. He might be in the news. But I'm very excited to see what they can do on offense. This was not the year for the Packers to draft the tight end because I didn't think there was a tight end. Unless your scouts were saying, dude, this guy is solid. Like Todd McShay, Mel Kiper, and all these draft guys aren't talking about it. But we know what we're talking about. This guy is solid. We should take him. On the outside looking in, there wasn't that prospect this year at tight end. But, I mean, dude, there were receivers you could have gone in and gotten. They just did. Well, okay, we're going to beat a dead horse talking about the Packers and then passing up receivers. But I think that's a good point you bring up, Drew.
I mean, the Patriots do it every year. They have a lot of unnamed receivers, and they make people named guys. And I think it shows you how important the quarterback is, but then it also shows you, like when we talked about Lamar, how important having weapons is to win, because Lamar probably wouldn't be as successful if he didn't have all those weapons around him that make him more valuable. I still think he'd be a great quarterback, but I think he wouldn't be an MVP quarterback if he didn't have the 3 tight ends to help him, or Hollywood Brown, or Mark Ingram. So I think every system is different, and I think every core is different.
Dude, we need this. We're gonna save this for another episode because we could go into a whole episode about this alone. It really occurred to me this week after we filmed the running backs episode. Dude, like his running game certainly fits into it, but I was watching the Ravens a few Ravens games the other day. Dude, Lamar Jackson was throwing dudes who are wide ass open. Like, I still don't know how to judge his arm. He's got a big arm. He showed good accuracy at times this year, but there were touchdown passes where his tight ends were wide ass open. And I think a lot of it has to do with his ability to get out of the pocket. You have to dedicate a linebacker to watch him. So, I just wanted to throw that in there. I think it shows how good his tight ends are, but I think he makes his receivers better, his tight ends better by freeing up coverage for them. But also, I still don't know how to assess Lamar Jackson, honestly. Dude, like, how many times would Mark Andrews be wide-ass open in the end zone? It was insane. But I digress on that one. Pookie, you had a team that you want to throw in there for a skill position. A sneaky team.
We already kind of talked about him a little bit, but I think that the Minnesota Vikings, man, with Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, and Kyle Rudolph, that they're a big-time team to watch because obviously they have the running game with Cook going on, but then Thielen is also an elite top 10 receiver in this league. Literally pushed Stephon Diggs out of Minnesota. And Justin Jefferson, young player out of LSU, I think that he could definitely come in and make a huge impact. Kyle Rudolph, that's an unspoken already. He's already an elite tight end or has been in the league for several years. He might be getting up there in age a little bit, but I think with that group of players, Kirk Cousins has no shortage of weapons. My question for them is when are they gonna blow the top off? They've shown that they can produce against pretty good teams and even be playoff contenders with that group of weapons. But I want to see them put up a historic season before I give them my stamp of approval. But I think that they're on their way. And if not with Minnesota, one of those players in free agency is going to go somewhere and they're going to be a part of something special.
Yeah. No, I mean, the crazy thing, too, is you can say those players, you know, there's some sneaky guys, too, and Irv Smith Jr. and Alexander Madison who are backups, but probably could start in a couple other teams or have a bigger role if they were on a team that had, you know, didn't have as a superstar caliber person in front of them. So I think they're very good, and I think they're definitely going to have a bright future if they use their weapons right.
Drew with help on this one. Is Adam Thielen a top 10 wide receiver? I love Adam Thielen. I'm huge on Adam Thielen, but is he a top 10 receiver?
All right, since we want to tear off that Band-Aid. Okay, Adam Thielen is one of the most targeted receivers in the league. He eats targets, okay? he literally eats targets like
Zeke eats in general, that fat ass?
Yeah, that fat back. I mean.
Oh, man. Drew, is he –
So I think he falls in the realm of like top maybe 8 to top 12 to 15. Like he's in that realm of 8 to 15 in my opinion. Obviously he did not come in. We did not know who he was, and I think that's what gives him that little oomph that people want to root for him, that people want to see him be successful. But the thing is, how do you guard him? I mean, like, how do you really like I played with someone in high school who was very similar to that he was a white dude that people were like, oh, this guy's not great. And he goes up there and he kills you. So I think it's definitely something where he's underrated still to this day, but I definitely think he deserves at least maybe a top 10 consideration. And if he's top 10, he's probably on the edge of like 9 or 10 is what I would give him. You know, if we really looked into it, you know, you could see him at a 12 to 15. It just depends, I think, on that at that point who your bias is a little bit more than others.
Well, okay. So before this, I was looking at a news service based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So they're a Panthers website, but they ranked the top 10 receivers going into 2020. And I can give you a rundown just so you guys, if I remember the list correctly, to give you guys reference as to where you would put Adam Thielen. Like, would you take him over some of these guys? So number 10 was Kenny Galladay.
Whoa,
9.
whoa.
I know, dude.
Hold.
Like, is Kenny
see-
Galladay even the best
Galladay's-
receiver on his own team? Maybe, probably. But well, I'm thinking Marvin Jones Jr. I mean,
Kenny Galladay is almost a top 5 receiver in the league. I'm just saying, guys. Look what he did with David Blah this last year.
Name 9 receivers better than Adam Thielen, and I can name 10 above.
Here we go. Here we go. Ooh. Here we go, Pook. Here, the 9 was Godwin, 8 was Evans, 7 was Cooper, 6 was OBJ, and then I think the top 5 are untouchable. I mean, you're talking about Evans, Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, Michael Thomas, Julio Jones. So it's really like, do you take Thielen above Galladay, OBJ, Godwin? Godwin's
take
probably the
Thielen.
easiest to replace, but
I take Thielen over Cooper.
I'd take him over Godwin.
Take him
And
over Cooper. Yeah, that makes him top 8 right there.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. It depends on bias because I mean I think Thielen when he's healthy he's there every game producing. Cooper's not there every game producing. You know, him playing Slay twice a year, he sucks against Darius Slay. I think I would take Galladay over. I would almost take Galladay at number 6. I'm telling you, Galladay is great.
Here's my thing,
He's
bro.
great.
So I played. So like I just didn't have time to. It wasn't worth me investing in NFL Red Zone this year or Sunday Ticket because we had meetings. We'd be meeting at the time when all those games were being played, so there was no point in having it. This was my first year to be able to get it, and I don't even know when we're gonna have the season. But so that being said, I never had a chance to see the Lions play. I don't know about Kenny Galladay other than fantasy points. I know he put up decent numbers, but I never saw him play. So the way you reacted so strongly to Kenny Galladay, I'm like, dude, fuck. Obviously, I haven't watched enough to know about Kenny Galladay.
Yeah,
I didn't know he was that good. But
I'm big into fantasy football. I listen to fantasy football podcasts, whatever like that. So part of it's a bias towards that. But he's almost they picked him thinking he was a second coming of Megatron. Now that's big shoes to fill. He's obviously not going to fill those shoes, but your quarterback's Matthew Stafford. Stafford's great. He gets hurt. I don't even know who their damn quarterbacks were this year besides David Blah out of Purdue. I don't even know how to say his last name. They had another guy too. He still had a top 10 year as a receiver. Jeff Driscoll, that's who it was. I knew it was some dude out of Florida. I couldn't remember his damn name for the life of me. But I'm just saying he's very, very, very good. And Marvin Jones is also very underappreciated because, like you said, no one watches the Lions. They're never on TV besides on Thanksgiving Day.
no.
I'm telling you, go back, watch some Lions film this year of Kenny Galladay. He pops off the charts.
I'm not saying he's a bad receiver. I just don't think he's in the top 10 yet.
I mean, obviously I haven't watched enough Buccaneers. We'll see the Buccaneers plenty because they have 5 primetime games this year. I didn't get to see – I had Chris Godwin on my fantasy team too. I know he was putting up decent numbers, but I didn't know how good he was. And then when I saw him being ranked in the top 10 on these lists, I'm like, damn. Like –
So
Whoa.
So
Is he
Godwin's
wrong?
supposed to
That one out.
What? Is he wrong?
I'm just saying, like think about it. Godwin is a slot receiver. He's going to be in the slot. He's probably going to get more than Evans, but I still think those two guys are top 10 guys. Like they both produce. I think Evans is falling a little bit lower just because Tom Brady doesn't take as much deep threats. But I think if they get in the red zone, you have Gronk and Evans on both sides. Who are you picking as a defense? You have to take one away, and Gronk and Brady's connection, Evans and Brady.
I'm just
Be a
telling you,
killer.
man. I want to step in with this Mike Evans thing. I think if it weren't for injuries, and if that team had been a little better in the earlier parts of his career, dude, Mike Evans when he was at A&M, I got to see it firsthand for a few years. The dude was mossing on 3 defensive Alabama defensive backs, dude. Mike, in his rookie year, he was insane. I mean, yeah, he was injured off and on and stuff, but to me, if Mike Evans is healthy in the right system, he's up there. He's top 5 in my opinion. So
I'm pulling up his stats right now for his entire season. He came into the NFL in 2014. He's averaged 1,000 yards every season, and the only season the lowest amount of touchdowns he's had is 3 in his career. But he averages. He's had 2 seasons of 12, 2 seasons of 8, and 1 season of 5, and then that 1 season of 3 touchdowns. Like he's a dynamic receiver. He just plays in Tampa Bay. We don't see him. We don't hear about him as much. And I think media plays a big role into who we perceive as the top receivers and running backs and tight ends because of who we get to see and who we don't get to see.
Yeah, we pretty much talked about everybody. I did want to bring this part up. I was thinking about across divisions, who has the best, like the most impactful skill positions in the league as far as divisions goes. And I was like, dude, Drew, all right, Drew, you make that face. Who do you think I'm going to say?
The NFC South.
Yeah.
You got McCaffrey, you got Kamara, you've got Todd Gurley now.
As we mentioned. And then Julio,
Julio,
who I think honestly is still, when he's healthy, is still the best receiver in football. So, I mean.
Yeah, and they're stacked. This season's going to – I mean, the only knock you have on them is the Panthers, but I think even the Panthers have a competent, offensive group.
Yeah.
With C-Mac, and you have Curtis Samuel, you have Rodney Anderson, you have DJ Moore, watch out. Top 10 next year. Watch out.
Top 10 receiver next year. Pookie, snip this fucking clip out and make sure we keep this clip for storage. He just said DJ Moore will be a top 10 receiver next year.
That one's going in the archives, goddammit.
Yeah. Okay. We talked about the Panthers, and we're running out of time, but this will lead in. So we obviously plan these episodes in advance, what we want to talk about. USA Today came out with predictions for next year as in what, wins-loss records and who they think will get into the playoffs. Very interesting takes as to who gets the number 1 pick. And we talked about quarterbacks earlier, but we're going to have to go back to quarterbacks because obviously with Trevor Lawrence being in the mix next year, looking at these different scenarios in terms of who gets the number 1 pick. So and this ties back to the Panthers. Y'all were talking about the Panthers. If the Panthers were somehow to end up with the number 1 overall pick, you've got a couple options. They're obviously lacking, to me, that you still need a receiver. You still need a great receiver. And as good as this draft class was with receivers, you got some guys coming in next year who are can't-miss prospects too. On the top end, might be better than this year's with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and I'm missing a few. Alabama, Devonta Smith at Alabama. I mean, those 3 guys right there alone are huge. If you're the Panthers, you need a receiver. You've got a solid quarterback tied down to a contract. It's like, what do you do with that pick? Do you take Lawrence if you have the number 1 pick? Or do you try – All right, I've got that answer. We'll get into it more next time. But, Pookie, any quick thoughts on that one? What you would want to do?
I'm going for Big Lever Trevor.
Okay, so we need to get big enough to where we can start making T-shirts. I might need to make T-shirts anyway. I think Big Lever Trevor is the best thing I've heard so far. I love Tank for Trevor. But, Drew, can we get behind this? Can we get behind making tank tops Big Lever Trevor?
Yeah, I'll get Jackie on it. She's been making T-shirts. She got a whole cricket today and everything. So we'll be pumping out. We'll try to pump out some T-shirts.
Be on the freaking lookout for these T-shirts, Pookie. That's big time, man.